exactly midnight, Alexander Whitmore, the widowed industrial billionaire and one of the most private men in the country, expected what he always returned home to: silence. After 12 straight hours of meetings and a heavy, draining charity gala, he entered his enormous mansion carrying only one thing: a weighty tension and a kind of loneliness only widowers know, the kind that lingers long after the world stops asking if they are okay. But that night was different. Instead of silence, he heard something faint, something human, a soft hum, a woman's slow, steady breathing, and beneath it, the tiny heartbeat rhythm of two babies. He froze. Then he set his briefcase on the marble floor and followed the sound down the long hallway, passing portraits of his ancestors whose painted eyes seemed to follow every step. The closer he got, the faster his own heartbeat grew. When he turned the corner, he stopped dead. From the half-open door of the nursery spilled the warm glow of a small lamp beside the rocking chair. And there, wrapped in a wool blanket, asleep in the chair, was the new cleaning employee, Maya Collins, 28 years old, hired only 3 months earlier, and in her arms, as if it were natural since birth, slept his 6-month-old twins, Lily and Samuel Whitmore. They were deeply asleep, their tiny fingers clutching her shirt as though their hearts had known her forever. Alexander stood in the doorway for a full minute, unable to move, then whispered in a voice barely audible, "What are you doing with my children?" Later, security cameras would show him stepping back, confused, unsure whether to call security, wake her, or run from the emotions suddenly rising within him. But something deep inside told him to wait. It had been a long time since he had seen the twins asleep with such pure surrender. Nobody expected Alexander to find this scene, but after gathering reports, it became clear that earlier that evening at 9 o'clock, the night nanny had called in sick for an emergency. Staff tried to reach Alexander, but he was in the middle of a critical investment meeting and his phone was off. With the twins crying endlessly and no replacement available, Maya had volunteered to help just until they fall asleep. Though she was a cleaner, not a nanny, everyone had noticed before. The twins always calmed down with her. We don't know why. By 10:15, she had soothed them into drowsiness, but every time she tried to leave, one would cry and wake the other. Exhausted, she sat in the rocking chair, holding them together until sleep overtook her. And at midnight, Alexander found them. Shock turned slowly into a strange relief, a bittersweet comfort he hadn't felt since the death of his wife, Bianca, during childbirth. He loved his children, but a wall of deep grief had kept him apart from them, and seeing the baby sleeping in the arms of a stranger broke that wall just a little. Alexander returned to the nursery after a few minutes and gently touched Maya's shoulder. She awoke with a start and whispered shakily, "I'm sorry. They wouldn't sleep. I didn't mean to." He raised his hand calmly to stop her apologies. "Why didn't you call someone else?" she said shyly. "I did. No one came, and I didn't want to wake them again." When he tried to take the children, they clutched her even tighter. "Leave them. They seem fine." In that moment, staff in the hallway saw something they had not seen since his wife's passing. Alexander's features softened and his voice carried warmth. He remained standing for over an hour, watching the 3 of them asleep. At one point, he whispered, "I haven't seen them this peaceful since Bianca." It was the first time he had mentioned his late wife in months. At 1:15, he placed the twins in their cribs and then said to Maya, "Thank you." 2 words that shook the entire mansion. The next morning, he issued a strange order. Maya must not be reprimanded. She would receive childcare training, and she could enter the nursery whenever the twins needed her. From that day, Alexander began to change. As days passed, the twins reached out to Maya whenever she entered. They calmed to her voice, fell asleep on her shoulder, as if her heart understood a language the world could not speak. And Alexander, the man who feared approaching his children's embrace, began entering the nursery every morning himself, running his hand over Samuel's hair, kissing Lily's forehead, and pausing to listen to the silence that no longer hurt. The mansion itself was no longer cold. There was light, warmth, movement, as if Maya and the twins had rearranged the heartbeat of the house. That night was not just a passing scene. It was a turning point. Alexander, despite his grief, was not heartless, merely broken to the point where he feared anyone would touch the shards of him. Maya, however, had not just given the twins sleep. She had restored tenderness to the home and reminded him that life, despite its cruelty, could still give a moment that puts everything in its place. That moment was the first step toward what no one could have imagined. His gaze toward her began to change. He watched the way she held the twins, her calm voice, her patience, her concern. Something inside him softened. It was not love at first sight. It began as attention, then relief, then respect, and finally something deeper, growing silently. One winter evening, he entered the nursery to find Maya quietly telling the twins a story. She did not notice him, but he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Maya radiated a warmth he could not manufacture despite all his wealth. When Samuel reached out to her, she smiled that small, shy smile, and in that very moment, he thought to himself, "This woman, she has a place in my heart without even knowing it." Months later, with everything changed, Alexander gathered his courage and asked her to meet him in the garden at sunset. She was afraid, thinking it would be some administrative decision, but he spoke firmly for the first time since Bianca's passing. "Maya, your presence in my life and my children's was no coincidence. I want us to begin a new life together. Will you marry me?" Maya froze, eyes flicking between the ground and his face. Her fingers trembled. Slowly, hesitantly, she whispered, I accept." The words, soft as a gentle breeze, were enough to change the fate of the entire family. Weeks later, they married in a small family ceremony. Lily and Samuel sat on Maya's shoulders, crying whenever separated from her. And for the first time in years, Alexander smiled fully, because Maya was not just his wife, she was the safety and love that brought life back into his home.